The Whirlwind Episode 1 starts with a flashback to 7.5 hours before the arrest of the current Prime Minister, Park Dong-ho. Dong-ho is accused of accepting hundreds of bribes, worth millions of won from a certain Mr. Choi. The prosecutor is expected to arrest Dong-ho. According to the media, the prosecutor has enough evidence to prove their case, and many are calling for the acceleration of the hearing. Simultaneously, we see Dong-ho driving to the Blue House to secretly meet with President Jang Tae-jun. At the back of our minds, we assumed that Dong-jo would beg for mercy, but we were in for quite a shock. It turns out that President Jang Tae-jun framed Dong-ho to take the fall and save his son. Even though Dong-ho has been nothing but loyal during their long-time friendship, President Jang Tae-jun is determined to make him the scapegoat. He feels Dong-jo should have turned a blind eye to his crimes and those of his sons. As such, he is hoping that Dong-ho will take the blame quietly and not fight back. On the other hand, Dong-ho has a plan and knows that there is no point in trying to get sentimental with President Jang Tae-jun or plead for mercy. He once saved President Jang Tae-jun's life when he had a cardiac attack and knows of his underlying health issues. While talking with the president, Dong-ho switches the president's vape and gives him one with substances that will lead to cardiac arrest. He then walks out and meets the chief of staff, Yoon-suk, and pleads his innocence to her. Afterwards, Yoon-suk talks with the president and informs him that the prosecution is already looking into Dong-ho as per his request. However, Yoon-suk doubts they will find him guilty. As they talk, President Jang Tae-jun falls to the ground and is rushed to the Armed Forces Capital Hospital. Meanwhile, Dong-ho returns to his office and is met by his concerned secretary, Jong-yeon. Dong-ho assures her that they did what must be done to save the country and now have to focus on the next plan. Dong-ho starts working on his speech, awaiting the call from the Blue House. Unfortunately, the Blue House calls to inform them that President Jang Tae-jun is still alive but in critical condition. Suddenly, they are forced to pivot their plans since Dong-ho can immediately become the acting president. Elsewhere, Soo-jin, the deputy prime minister, rushes to the hospital to stay by the First Lady's side. At the same time, she plots with Kang Sang-woon, Daejin Group vice chairman, to keep the president alive and arrest Dong-ho for their personal benefit. If President Jang Tae-jun dies, she and Sang-woon will end up in prison for corruption. As soon as everyone arrives at the hospital, the doctors notify them that President Jang Tae-jun needs surgery, but his survival rate is low. After the doctor's announcement, Soo-jin asks the First Lady to order the doctors to prolong President Jang Tae-jun's surgery until 9 a.m. This gives her time to mobilize the prosecution to arrest Dong-ho the following morning, so he won't take over. Aware of this, Dong-ho reaches out to Chairman Kang, a strong politician with many ties. Chairman Kang has always had his eye on the presidential seat, but is always losing the race. Dong-ho promises to give him a better chance at winning the next election if he helps him. As morning dawns, the First Lady, Soo-jin, and the Chief of Staff are surprised when Chairman Kang brings highly reputed doctors to observe the surgery. The operating doctors get cold feet and end the surgery early. Han Cheol, the Seoul district prosecutor, arrives with a warrant for arrest. If anything, he confronts Soo-jin and announces that as long as the president is unable to fulfill his duties, he is taking over as the acting president. In other words, Han Cheol can't arrest him since a president can't be charged during his tenure, and that law applies to him as an acting president. On the other side of the hospital, the doctors hold a conference and announce the surgery went well, but President Jang Tae-jun is in a coma. Outside, Dong-ho speaks to reporters, assuring the nation he will take over the reins until President Jang Tae-jun recovers. Dong-ho is perfectly aware that he doesn't have enough time. He faces great opposition, and the fraud accusation is doing him no favors. He has a month or so before the opposition requests for another election if President Jang Tae-jun. If President Jang Tae-jun wakes up, he has even less time to prove his innocence and arrest Sang-woon and Soo-jin. With time not on his side, Dong-ho meets with an old friend, Sang-suk, a former prosecutor. He and Ji-tae, another prosecutor, had tried to take down the Daejin Group, but it didn't end well. Sang-suk has long given up his spirit to fight, but Dong-ho inspires him to find it again. They agree that Ji-tae's sacrifice shouldn't be in vain. Soo-jin meets with Sang-woon and convinces him to rethink his strategy of going after Dong-ho using a fake witness and the media. She advises him to contact the opposition leaders and force Dong-ho to resign as the acting president. They also ask Han Cheol to plant some evidence in Jong Hyun's belongings, framing Dong-ho further. The media reports that Dong-Ho ordered his secretary to hide the funds for him. However, since the evidence is fake, Dong-ho and his team have a hard time proving their innocence. Upon hearing the news, the National Assembly votes to kick Dong-ho out of the Blue House. His only hope is convincing the cabinet members, but Soo-jin is one step ahead of him. She invites the cabinet to a lunch date so they don't meet with Dong-ho. Later, she sets a meeting with Dong-ho and explains that she will take their fight all the way. She believes no one will side with Dong-ho, as it will be political suicide. At the Blue House, Yoon-suk grows suspicious as to what led to President Jang Tae-jun's sudden cardiac arrest. She takes his vape and asks for an analysis of it. The doctor discovers that the vape contains new drugs that are dangerous to someone with heart issues like the president. It becomes apparent that someone tried to assassinate the president. Yoon-suk quickly puts the pieces together and realizes only Dong-ho could have pulled this off. She calls for a meeting with Dong-ho at the Blue House, and the latter comes clean. He gives her a recording of his admission of guilt and asks for a month to deal with the corruption before turning himself in. Yoon-suk agrees to the deal and changes her loyalty from President Jang Tae-jun to Dong-ho. To help him, she asks the First Lady to call a dinner meeting with the cabinet members and announce that the president briefly woke up. According to Yoon-suk, the president requested Dong-ho to take over. As such, she orders the cabinet to support Dong-ho and challenges anyone to deny President Jang Tae-jun his request. As expected, Soo-jin asks to verify the statement, but Yoon-suk quickly puts her in her place. With everyone in agreement, Dong-jo takes over the meeting and dismisses Soo-jin as a cabinet member. The Whirlwind episode 2 starts presently. Soo-jin leaves the dinner meeting and gets a call from her secretary, Man-gil, about the vape. He finds out that Yoon-suk had asked the doctors to look into it. Man-gil hacks into the hospital system to confirm and brings the files to Soo-jin. Once again, Soo-jin, determined to stay in the game, finds a way to have an upper hand over Dong-ho. She immediately visits Byung-oh, brigadier general at the Armed Forces Capital Hospital, and threatens him with being compliant with the attempted assassination of a sitting president. On the other hand, Dong-ho moves to reform the prosecution and hire Jang-suk as the prosecutor general. However, Yoon-suk worries he will face more opposition by stirring things up further. Nonetheless, Dong-ho insists they have no time, and they need to move first, regardless of the consequences. He meets with Jang-suk the next day at Ji-tae's grave and promises his old friend to go all the way. Dong-ho asks Jang-suk to stop at nothing, even when the former becomes compromised. They agree that no matter what happens, they will be impartial and let justice prevail. To prove his point, Dong-ho refuses to attend his first event as the acting president. As he hangs out with Jang-suk, Dong-ho gets a call from Yoon-suk that the hospital has been hacked and Tae vape has been stolen. Dong-ho is immediately sure that Soo-jin must have been the force behind the hack. Speaking of Soo-jin, she calls her Man-gil and asks him to summon the press. However, Sang-woon uses her husband, Min-ho, to subdue her. Unfortunately, this is not the first time Sang-woon has invested in Min-ho's company illegally. Sang-woon opts to use the information against Dong-ho to tame and make him his puppet. Soo-jin tries to dissuade him from doing this, saying Dong-ho is a wild dog that can't be tamed, but the chaebol ignores her. If anything, Sang-woon threatens Soo-jin with her husband's illegal dealings and promises to expose her if she exposes Dong-ho. He is also offended that Soo-jin only promises to try to get his dad a special pardon instead of just doing it. He figures he has a better chance with Dong-ho to get his dad out. Meanwhile, Dong-ho and his team come up with a plan to counterattack Soo-jin, anticipating her next move. Dong-ho doesn't even bat an eye when Sang-woon calls him and demands to meet. Initially, Dong-ho tries to deny meeting with the president that fateful day, but Sang-woon plays a recording of his meeting with President Jang Tae-jun a few minutes before Dong-ho arrived. In the recording, President Jang Tae-jun clearly mentions he will be meeting with Dong-ho. Dong-ho finds Sang-woon pathetic until he brings up his family. He listens to Sang-woon's demands and promises to give him an answer soon. However, he confides in Jong-yun that he won't give in to the Daejin group. Meanwhile, Chairman Park and Dong-ho have lunch to discuss bringing in President Jang Tae-jun's son, Jang Hyun-soo. Hyun-soo is the benefactor of the stolen PE funds that Dong-ho is accused of stealing. Dong-ho offers Chairman Park the documents to bring Hyun-soo down, but the former refuses the offer. He is scared that the move to attack Hyun-soo when his dad is still in a coma will create more enemies. The people love President Jang Tae-jun and believe he is above reproach. The politicians are scared to speak the truth and won't help Dong-ho if he comes for President Jang Tae-jun. As such, Chairman Park refuses to go all in with Dong-ho. After his failed meeting with Chairman Park, Dong-ho gets a call from Jang-suk informing him that the PE fraud case was transferred to the CIO, and all prosecutors were ordered to abandon the case. Dong-ho demands to speak to the CIO director immediately, but the man refuses to give in to Dong-ho's demands since he is on Soo-jin's payroll. Dong-ho decides to go with his plan B simultaneously. Soo-jin meets with Yun-suk and tries to convince her to switch sides again. However, Yun-suk refuses and reminds Soo-jin of her university days. Soo-jin is offended that Yun-suk still sees her as one of her former students, especially after all of her accomplishments. After Yun-suk refuses to switch her allegiance, Soo-jin threatens her and demands she resign as chief of staff for keeping quiet about President Jang Tae-jun's assassination attempt. At the prison, Sang-woon meets with his dad and assures him that he will be freed soon. He is overconfident, and his dad warns him to be careful. Sang-woon hopes to prove himself and get his inheritance. He doesn't want to lose the company to his younger brother. Taking a huge risk, Dong-ho and Yun-suk tighten the security at the Blue House and invite Sang-woon to discuss their deal. Sang-woon is under the impression that Dong-ho is taking his offer and walks in with his shoulders high and a list of demands. The first demand is to release his dad. Dong-ho acts agreeable as he prepares their drink. He puts poison in the drinks while Sang-woon is busy admiring the room. However, Sang-woon sees Dong-ho in the reflection of the painting and refuses to take the drink. He is shocked when Dong-ho takes the drink and immediately passes out. The presidential security team quickly arrive to arrest Sang-woon, claiming he poisoned Dong-ho. It turns out that was Dong-ho's plan all along, to make Sang-woon take the blame for attempting to poison two presidents. Yun-suk holds a press conference and announces that they found evidence of both poisonings in Sang-woon's house and that Sang-woon hacked the hospital to access President Jang Tae-jun's files. After the press conference, Yun-suk destroys Sang-woon's phone, getting rid of the evidence that Dong-ho met with President Jang Tae-jun that fateful night. In the meantime, Jong-yun rushes Dong-ho to the military hospital, but Soo-jin calls Byung-oh and asks him to let Dong-ho die. Byung-oh refuses to allow new doctors with expertise in saving Dong-ho to attend to him. As Dong-ho battles for his life, President Jang Tae-jun regains consciousness. The Whirlwind Episode 3 starts currently. Soo-jin orders Byung-oh to prevent the new doctors with expertise in poisoning from assisting Dong-ho. However, Yun-suk saw this coming, so she promotes Byung-oh to another position outside the hospital and appoints her man. The new chief quickly allows the new team to save Dong-ho. The following morning, Yun-suk visits the hospital and asks the doctors to ensure President Jang Tae-jun recovers slowly without any rushed measures. On the other side, Jong-yun tries to convince Dong-ho to take it easy and rest, but he stubbornly refuses. He is afraid he is running out of time and anticipates Soo-jin's next move to round up new legislators. He calls Jang-suk and asks him to coordinate with the few legislators he has to bring a special investigation against Hyun-soo. Meanwhile, Soo-jin video calls Sang-woon and plans how to save themselves. Soo-jin fears that Sang-woon is doomed since his case has been handed over to Jang-suk. She uses this opportunity to get Sang-woon to relent to her. Out of desperation, Sang-woon asks her to contact one of his right men, Dong-soo, to help her get him out. She asks him not to contact her husband again and let her run the show. She plans to use their people in the system to get a special prosecutor and bring Sang-cheon on board with them. After that, the prosecutor's office will lose its edge, and they will wait for President Jang Tae-jun to return and save them all. As the plot thickens, Hyun-soo is summoned to the prosecutor's office, where hundreds of people show up to support him and criticize the prosecution. Unfortunately, Hyun-soo refuses to cooperate. Another problem arises when Chairman Park refuses to help Dong-ho and scolds him for attacking Hyun-soo at a delicate time. This time, Dong-ho is determined to have his way and keep the case going. If anything, he is curious to see how things will unfold as the politicians pledge their allegiance to President Jang Tae-jun. On the other hand, Soo-jin fails to convince Sang Cheon to join the special prosecution. She gets to his office and is surprised to discover that the prosecution has already arrested Dong-soo. Dong-soo is one of the few people who knows where the skeletons are buried in Daejin Group. He is Sang-woon's vault keeper and, as such, can lead the prosecutors to the hidden slush funds. However, Soo-jin doesn't give up. She visits President Jang Tae-jun at the hospital, hoping the man will wake up and stop Dong-ho. Unfortunately for her, the doctors are under strict orders not to give President Jang Tae-jun shock therapy. Since it is a military hospital, the doctors have to follow Dong-ho's orders as he is the acting president. Soo-jin realizes that time is running out for her. In the meantime, Dong-ho visits the First Lady to threaten her to order her son to confess. He points out that Soo-jin is unreliable and will only save herself. As they talk, the prosecutors arrive at Min-ho's company to arrest him for fraud. Min-ho reaches out to her for help, but Soo-jin is also scared. As the noose tightens around her neck, Soo-jin takes her riskiest move yet. She sends her assistant, Man-gil, outside to keep watch while she kills President Jang Tae-jun. She covers his face with wet wipes and a handkerchief he gave her when they first won the elections. She promises to save his legacy and family as she slowly watches him suffocate to death. Dong-ho is about to convince the First Lady to talk to her son when they receive the news of President Jang Tae-jun's passing. Once again, Soo-jin ruins Dong-ho's plan and saves herself. As expected, the president's death shakes up the nation, and Soo-jin further stirs the people's anger against Dong-ho. She lies that in his last moment, President Jang Tae-jun succumbed after learning of his son's arrest. She adds that the president's last words were to reform the prosecution and ask for forgiveness for failing the nation. The people turn against Dong-ho completely, even as the latter plans the president's funeral, at the same time. Soo-jin places herself as one of the chief mourners, hoping to will help with her popularity among the people. As she and Dong-ho discuss her cheap antics at President Jang Tae-jun's wake, Yoon-suk angers the people more when she announces that the investigation into Yoon-soo will continue. The people get angry, and Soo-jin is forced to escort Dong-ho to his car so that he doesn't hide at the venue like a coward. A few days before the funeral, the family refuses to let Dong-ho give the eulogy, and they pick Soo-jin instead, which is a big deal. By giving the eulogy, it signifies that Soo-jin should be his successor. Of course, Soo-jin gives a moving speech about how some bad apples are trying to destroy President Jang Tae-jun's legacy and how she will protect it. She also refuses to shake Dong-ho's hand in public during the funeral. 3 days later, Jang-suk is caught off guard when he learns that the case against Hyun-soo was stopped. The prosecutor general even apologizes to the First Lady, and Pil-gyu goes to great effort to embarrass Jang-suk even though he is a subordinate. Pil-gyu is feeling himself because Soo-jin is backing him up. She is now focused on the next phase as her popularity skyrockets. At the Blue House, Dong-ho and his team worry about his dropping popularity and the fallout with the Korean Liberal Party. In fact, most of the ministers don't want to work with Dong-ho and are threatening to resign. Dong-ho can't run a country without support. He decides it is time to step down and give up his position as the acting president. He calls for a press release and announces that he is resigning. However, he vows to return to the Blue House as a legitimately elected president of the people. The Whirlwind episode 4 starts with the race to the Blue Horse in full swing. The presidential candidates for the Korean Liberal Party debate are currently ongoing, and everyone is tuned in to see how it will go. All candidates except Dong-ho are hoping to use their connections to President Jang Tae-jun to sway the votes. As for Soo-jin, she comes for Dong-ho's jugular by asking double-edged questions, such as his alleged harassment of the former president's family, but Dong-ho sees through her and answers them with ease. Soo-jin's popularity continues to increase while Dong-ho's withers. Later, Soo-jin advises Sang-woon to be patient. She is sure that she will be the next president and give him a special pardon with his father. She argues that winning the election will solve all their problems, and Sang-woon can get back to secure his inheritance. She assumes she will win and send Dong-ho to prison. Seems easy, right? She also orders Pilgyu to resume the investigation into Dong Ho and secretly feeds the media information. The media announces that Chairman Choi, currently being interrogated by Pilgyu, has given a handwritten statement citing that he paid 1 billion won to Dong Ho when he was the prime minister in exchange for tax audit immunity. Surprisingly, the media even manages to get their hands on the handwritten statement. In turn, Dong Ho decides to retaliate because "go big or go home" is his motto. He calls Jang Suk and asks him to accept the call to move the case to the CIO. The current CIO director, Lee Young-won, is Chairman Park's supporter, and there is a possibility they are planning to trap Dong Ho. However, Dong Ho plans to take himself to the CIO's office for interrogation and beat Soo-jin at her own game. Young-won interrogates Dong Ho while Yoon-suk invites Chairman Park to tea and assures him that Dong Ho will keep his promise to get him into the Blue House. According to Yoon-suk, Dong Ho is using a three-part strategy to win votes from Soo-jin and hand them over to Chairman Park at the last moment. Of course, Chairman Park is skeptical, given that the CIO is currently interrogating Dong Ho, and Soo-jin's popularity is skyrocketing. However, Dong Ho outsmarts Soo-jin by sneakily having Chairman Choi alter the date in his statement. Chairman Choi betrays Soo-jin and sues the date Dong Ho gave him. The date in question is November 12th, and Dong Ho has evidence that he had dinner with Soo-jin and worked until late. As such, Dong Ho couldn't be at two places at once, and Soo-jin has no choice but to be his alibi. If she denies it, she will be lying publicly, as it is a given fact she was with Dong Ho. If she turns against Chairman Choi, she kills the credibility of his statement and proves Dong Ho's innocence. It also subtly shows that the CIO were on an ill-advised witch hunt against Dong Ho. In the end, she defends Dong Ho and simultaneously clears his name. Chairman Park calls off Young-won and gets into a deal with Dong Ho. After a tough day, Soo-jin gets a call from her husband, and they fight over Min-ho's reluctance to step down as the CEO of Namsan. Min-ho is feeling jealous of his wife's success and wants to make something of himself. As the final round of preliminaries gets closer, the three presidential candidates get ready to win over electoral votes. To win, Dong Ho joins hands with Sang Cheon, the opposition party. Sang Cheon has a problematic past after his father was lost at sea and ended up in North Korea. He was declared dead a few years later, but Dong Ho leaks to the press that Sang Cheon's dad is alive and thriving in North Korea. Sang Cheon doesn't take this kindly and asks for a meeting. Dong Ho uses his charm to threaten Sang Cheon and get him on his side. Sang Cheon is surprised that Dong Ho didn't come cowering to him but took the ballsy option. He agrees to discreetly collect electoral votes to support Dong Ho in the primaries even though it is illegal. In the meantime, Soo-jin is sure of a win as President Jang Tae-jun's former supporters take her side. On the other hand, Chairman Park is discouraged after seeing the ongoing voting, and it becomes clear he is losing. He visits Dong Ho, but the latter refuses to uphold their deal. It turns out that Dong Ho found out that Chairman Park had some ulterior motives he hid. Out of options, Chairman Park withdraws from the race for a third time. Meanwhile, on the last day of Electoral College registration, Soo-jin aligns herself with President Jang Tae-jun's wife and goes on a full press tour at President Jang Tae-jun's grave. Shedding tears while embracing each other, the two women make quite a moving statement, touching the hearts of many and causing Soo-jin's popularity to grow further. The next morning, Soo-jin wakes up in high spirits, confident she will win. Even the media deems her the likely winner, and her supporters show up in huge numbers. However, they all get the shock of their lives when Dong Ho is announced as the winner. Soo-jin is so stunned, she drops her acceptance speech and appears to be in a trance as Dong Ho reaches for her hands to celebrate his victory. I bet she didn't see this twist coming. The Whirlwind episode 5 starts currently. There is only one day left to the candidate declaration, but Dong Ho is struggling to submit his papers as the party members turn against him. Led by Soo-jin, they order the party leader not to sign Dong Ho's declaration. The party members hold an assembly meeting and call Dong Ho to withdraw his candidacy. Later, Soo-jin publicly accuses Dong Ho of using unfair methods to win and challenges him to come clean. Meanwhile, Sang Cheon submits his papers as the opposition candidate. Through a flashback, we learn that Soo-jin and Sang Cheon have quite a painful past together. While Soo-jin was in university, she protested against the government, and Sang Cheon was the person sent to oppress the protests. He tortured her for days, wanting to know where the council leader, Man-ho, was hiding. Currently, Soo-jin reaches out to Yun-suk, promising her a bigger position if she switches sides. Unfortunately, Yun-suk reveals her hand by showing Soo-jin the recording of Dong-ho admitting to the attempted assassination of President Jang to Jun. As the deadline gets close, Dong-ho goes into hiding with Jong-yun to clear his mind. He reflects on the past and how he trusted Soo-jin to save Ji-tae only to belatedly learn she was the mastermind. He blames himself for Ji-tae's death and wants Soo-jin to pay for her betrayal. He confides in Jong-yun that he has given up on his future and is willing to go the extra mile to avenge her brother. Note that Ji-tae and Jong-yun are siblings. After thinking about things clearly, Dong-ho pays Soo-jin an impromptu visit. He uses Soo-jin's past with Sang-cheon to threaten her. He promises he will support Sang-cheon if the party didn't accept his candidacy. He also has Jong-yun steal Soo-jin's papers, so she won't have time to submit them before the deadline. Soo-jin was under the impression that Dong-ho would renounce his candidacy and choose her as his replacement. She had her papers ready to go, but with Dong-ho's interference, that won't happen. If anything, Sang-cheon will win the elections without an opponent and become the president. After debating who among the two is a bigger devil, Soo-jin decides to support Dong-ho. At least he never tied her to a chair for days and tortured her. She calls the party leader and orders him to accept Dong-ho's declaration. With minutes to spare, Dong-ho is able to submit his papers. The media quickly picks up on the changing wind and reports that Soo-jin and Dong-ho have formed an alliance and will work together to win the elections. Soo-jin starts by having Dong-ho do a press tour while paying tribute to President Jang Tu-jun's grave and the former First Lady, giving him the old watch he once exchanged with Jang Tu-jun. Soo-jin then deepens her claws into Dong-ho's campaign and plans his schedule to secure victory. At the same time, she meets with Sang-woon's dad in prison, and he asks her to abandon Sang-woon and save Dae-jin if push comes to shove. As the election day nears, another presidential debate is held. Sang-cheon takes a risk by using the fact that North Korea is building strong weapons to attack Dong-ho. He claims that President Jang Tu-jun wasted money sending help to North Korea and that Dong-ho's loyalty is questionable because he intends to send relief to North Koreans. This is a sensitive topic and Dong-ho's answer threatens to hurt him one way or the other. It is even worse since recent reports show that North Korea has just launched a new missile successfully. On the other hand, Sang-cheon has built his reputation for being anti-North Korean, and his support is growing. All his life, he has been forced to prove himself after North Korean soldiers accidentally captured his dad. He made a whole career catching spies and bringing them to justice. To help Dong-ho, Soo-jin secretly introduces Pilgyu to him and reveals damaging information on Sang-cheon. While everyone now knows that Sang-cheon's dad is alive in North Korea and thriving, no one knows that Sang-cheon saved him during the famine years by sending money. In fact, Sang-cheon has a half-brother who acted as the courier to collect the money. If that is not bad enough, Sang-cheon's brother is the one making the nuclear weapons for their enemy. Initially, Dong-ho is hesitant to align himself with Soo-jin and accept the information from Pilgyu. Obviously, the information was not legally sought and using it can be problematic, but with Sang-cheon's popularity rising, Dong-ho decides to use the information. The morning of the last debate, Yun-suk warns Dong-ho to be careful with Soo-jin. She threatens to use the recording in her safe if he oversteps. Unfortunately, Soo-jin hears their conversation as she hid a listening device on the watch the First Lady gave Dong-ho. At the debate, Sang-cheon brings up North Korea and unknowingly walks into his own trap. Dong-ho hits him with all the hard evidence and makes him lose the support of his followers. Dong-ho is the clear winner, and he is announced as the next president. However, he ignores Soo-jin's handshake during the celebrations, and she silently walks away. Dong-ho is sworn in as the new president, and as promised, he returns to the Blue House and immediately makes moves to kick Soo-jin and Dae-jin's people out of their high positions. However, unbeknownst to them, Soo-jin gets her hand on the recording from Yun-suk's safe and uses it to threaten Dong-ho. She believes it is the best bargaining chip to use to rule over him. The Whirlwind episode 6 picks up where we left off. After Soo-jin leaves, Dong-ho dismantles the watch as he watches the news about Sang-woon's dad, Yang-ik, getting a special pardon due to his declining health. It turns out that Dong-ho was the one who gave him a special pardon after serving only 2 of his 12-year sentence. Young-ik quickly gets to work by meeting with Soo-jin and plotting their next move. Soo-jin still worries that Dong-ho is up to something, but wants to control him by herself. They are also running out of time because Sang-woon's trial is around the corner, and if they try to defend him, they will end up exposing his economic crimes. Young-ik allows Soo-jin to control Dong-ho and make sure their people are appointed to the new government. She is given a list of all the cabinet and ministerial positions to suggest to Dong-ho. However, when she meets with Dong-ho, she pretends she needs a week to come up with a list. Dong-ho accuses her of trying to embarrass him further and gives her a day to send the list to him. He is horrified by the names suggested given that most of the names are involved in different scandals. However, Soo-jin points out that Dong-ho is not clean himself, so he can't point his fingers at others. In a flashback, we learn that Dong-ho knew about the listening device the very day he got the watch. However, he decided to use it to lure Soo-jin further. He played her like a fiddle and wanted her to hand over the list of the people on Daejin's payroll. After he gets the list, he makes his own and ignores the 200 names suggested by Soo-jin. She is shocked when Dong-ho announces a different list from the one she gave him. She meets him at the Blue House, and he invites her for lunch. However, she is in no mood to eat. In fact, she is planning on giving the recording to the media right after their meeting. Surprisingly, Dong-ho plays her a recording of herself admitting to killing President Jang Tae-jun. Apparently, Jong-yun and Mang-el used to date, and Jong-yun installed a listening device in the engagement ring before returning it to him. The ring helped Dong-ho record Soo-jin talking about how she killed President Jang Tae-jun feeling trapped. Soo-jin is forced to listen to Dong-ho's plans. For the first time, they engage in an open conversation about their respective journeys to this point. Soo-jin, grappling with the question of whether Dong-ho's resentment towards her stems from her role in Ji-tae's death or their shared traits, wonders if things would have been different had President Jang Tae-jun approached Dong-ho first about his son's issues. She tries to justify her actions, claiming she only sought to preserve the president's legacy. In response, Dong-ho admits to harboring multiple reasons for his hatred towards Soo-jin. Ultimately, they agree to destroy the evidence against them and move forward. He heads into a meeting with Chairman Park. In a surprising turn of events, Dong-ho proposes Chairman Park as his prime minister, cautioning him to ensure a clean record for the confirmation hearing. Dong-ho hopes that Chairman Park will spearhead the charges against the corrupt officials on Daejin's payroll, using it as a launchpad for his future political campaigns. He also plans for Yoon-suk to assume Chairman Park's former position. However, their meeting is abruptly interrupted when Chairman Park receives news that his son is being held in an overseas casino for failing to settle his gambling debts. Meanwhile, Soo-jin visits Young-ik to humbly dismiss herself since she failed him. However, the old man gives her a second chance, saying she is still useful to him. He wants her to focus on stopping Chairman Park's ascension to the prime minister position. They don't want the chairman to come after their people. Soo-jin quickly sends Pilgyu to inform Jang-suk about the arising gambling issue in Chairman Park's house. As expected, Jang-suk calls Dong-ho to warn him. Dong-ho visits Chairman Park and tries to convince him to abandon his son and focus on the confirmation hearing. He argues that Chairman Park's son is a grown man who made his own decisions and should deal with the consequences. He also warns the chairman that if he pays the money, it will be a violation of the Foreign Exchange Act since this is an international gambling case. However, Chairman Park worries his wife will die in the hospital from the stress of abandoning their kid. He asks Dong-ho to talk to Jang-suk to withdraw the case, and in turn he will give him all his support. The next morning, Jang-suk is disappointed when Dong-ho calls him for a meeting at Ji-tae's grave and asks him to stall the case. He gives Dong-ho his resignation letter, saying he is not a pushover and they had long agreed to go all the way. Dong-ho is disappointed in himself. Soon, the confirmation hearing day rolls by and Soo-jin watches the show in her office. She already set the stage for Chairman Park's downfall by meeting with Mr. Min, a local MP, asking him to bring up the gambling issue and giving him the necessary evidence. However, Mr. Min also met with Chairman Park, who offered an even sweeter deal to act like he had no evidence against him. Soo-jin is surprised when Mr. Min asks the question as planned, but then drops the matter, saying he has no evidence of Chairman Park saving his son by paying his debt. The facade continues, and Chairman Park gets comfortable, charming the assembly. However, things take a drastic turn when the media does a breaking story on how Chairman Park used his brother-in-law to get money for his son. Chairman Park is publicly embarrassed, and he starts crying during the hearing. On the other hand, after a deep reflection, Dong-ho calls Jang-suk and asks him to keep going. He asks his friend not to change, but he says he will change the world. He meets with his team after Chairman Park's failed hearing and decides that they should nominate Soo-jin as she is the only one best suited for the job. She is also the only one who won't turn it down. The news comes as a good surprise to Soo-jin. However, Dong-ho is planning to use her hearing to expose her dirty secrets. He anonymously informs Chairman Park that Soo-jin was responsible for his failed hearing. He also anonymously tells Sang Cheon that Soo-jin was responsible for the truth about his half-brother coming out during the debate. He then sits back, ready to enjoy the show as the two men plot their revenge against Soo-jin. He is sure she won't be able to withstand fighting two battles at once. The Whirlwind Episode 7. Currently, Dong-ho is anxiously waiting for Soo-jin's downfall. Her confirmation hearing is around the corner, and rumors about her corrupt husband are swirling. She meets with Sang Cheon, and he offers to give her a break if she joins his side. However, Soo-jin rejects his offer because she would rather die than team up with the man who tortured her for 6 days in the past. Sang Cheon is offended by her attitude towards him and makes a call to summon Hyun-soo to be a witness against Soo-jin at the confirmation hearing. This immediately causes the public to come to Soo-jin's defense, and she gives an interview talking about her hearing being about two opposing sides. One is attacking President Jang Tae-jun's legacy, and the other is protecting it. She denies all accusations against her, saying they are baseless rumors meant to destroy her reputation. While Soo-jin tries to find a way to survive, Dong-ho meets with the former First Lady and threatens to expose her fraudulent crimes. He gives her the option of leaving the country and tossing Soo-jin aside. Soo-jin is surprised to see on the news at Dong-ho's office that the First Lady is going on a trip and won't be by her side as he defends President Jang Tae-jun's legacy. If anything, the former First Lady publicly asks Soo-jin not to mention her husband anymore. Dong-ho relishes seeing Soo-jin struggle to keep it together and says he is doing it all for Ji-tae and won't stop until the very end. However, Soo-jin doesn't sit back and let Dong-ho win. She feeds Jang-suk information that Dong-ho was involved in President Jang Tae-jun's death. She is subtle but gives Jang SEO enough to make him suspicious of his old friend. When they meet, Jang-suk brings it up and informs Dong-ho that he will pursue the case no matter what. He has proof that Dong-ho met with President Jang Tae-jun minutes before he collapsed and doesn't believe it is a coincidence. Dong-ho plays it cool and subtly admits that at one point, they will have to meet as a prosecutor and defendant. At the same time, Soo-jin calls Dong-ho to make sure he knows that they will go down together, and she won't stay still. The plot continues to thicken when Dong-ho meets with Chairman Park, and they talk about switching committee members just 3 days before Soo-jin's confirmation hearing. You see, Dong-ho wants to turn this from a confirmation hearing to a prosecutorial interrogation by suddenly adding former prosecutors as committee members. He even meets with Young-won, the director of the CIO, and orders him to investigate Min-ho's company. He is worried that Jang-suk will come for him before he is done with Soo-jin and can't slow down and let that happen. As if reading his mind, Jang-suk calls to invite him to meet and celebrate Ji-tae's birthday. They meet at Ji-tae's grave, and Jang-suk reveals he has received more evidence that he can't overlook. He and 2 other prosecutors will look into the case and will stop at nothing to find the truth. Dong-ho asks his friend to do what he must do and keep his promise. He says they both need to fulfill their duties and keep their promises. On the other hand, Jong-yun visits Sang-woon in prison and convinces him to testify against Soo-jin in the confirmation hearing. This pushes Soo-jin to reconsider Sang Cheon's offer. Sang Cheon is optimistic that he can quell his supporters' anger with time. He says he has learned that for the South to survive, the North has to die. He argues they would make a great team if they worked together. The next day, Soo-jin meets with Young-ik and threatens to make him the main suspect in the PE funds case if he doesn't get Sang-woon to back down. She uses herself as bait to prove she means business. She then brings up an incident in the past that links Young-ik to the North and asks him to get in touch with an old acquaintance, Yang-ik is hesitant but agrees with her demands before she speaks to the reporters. It turns out Sang Cheon had Soo-jin broker a deal with a North Korean soldier who then executed his dad and stepbrother on the charges of treason. He then uses this opportunity to get his supporters back and implore their mercy. At the same time, Soo-jin turns her hearing into a clash between the committee members. The hearing ends with the members fighting instead of asking her questions. To make it worse, Sang Cheon summons Dong-ho as a witness, which is unprecedented since he is the sitting president. Dong-ho is pissed but willing to go to the hearing and risk it all. Yun-suk tries to warn him and informs him that Sang Cheon also summoned the former First Lady. Dong-jo admits he underestimated Soo-jin and will have to pay the price. Simultaneously, Jan-suk arrives at the Blue House as a prosecutor looking to investigate Dong-ho but is denied entry. He calls Dong-ho, and the latter tells him there will be no investigation and his team will be dissolved as they can't bring charges against a sitting president. Dong-ho knows Jang-suk won't stop looking into it and is only hoping to slow him down. In the meantime, Soo-jin is ultimately selected as the new prime minister, and Dong-ho is forced to appoint her. The episode ends with her appointment ceremony, when she asks Dong-ho not to lead her into making the same mistakes. In other words, not to make her come after him as he did with President Jang Tu-jun. The Whirlwind episode 8 picks up where we left off, with Soo-jin becoming the new prime minister. In her acceptance speech, she gives the equality speech, but none of us buys it. She then visits Sang-woon and demands an apology from him. She asks him to keep quiet and wait for her to deal with Dong-ho. Of course, Sang-woon has doubts, given that Dong-ho is the current president, but it's best to trust the devil, right? Meanwhile, Dong-ho forges on with his plan and sets a meeting with Yang-ik, hoping to get the father to interfere between Soo-jin and Sang-woon. For this favor, Yang-ik asks that Dong-ho give one of his men a position as the chairman of the NPS. He also explains that he needs funds from the National Pension Fund to influence his company's stock price. Yang-ik blames Dong-ho for always messing up his affairs for more than a decade. He feels it is only fair that he gets compensated for the damages caused. As Soo-jin expected, the prize is too much for Dong-ho, so he opts for another method. He records Yang-ik talking about how the funds will be used to also solve his succession issue. He wants Sang-woon to stay in prison while Sang-jin, his other son, takes over. Yang-ik is unaware that Yun-suk is on a call with Sang-woon and can hear everything. After Sang-woon hears his father's plan to betray him and allow him to go to jail for a crime he didn't commit, he sings like a canary. He cries while revealing the Macau account number used by the company for fraudulent dealings. Immediately after getting back to the Blue House, Dong-ho summons Young-won and promises to make him the next Minister of Justice if he launches an investigation into Namsan, Min-ho's company. The investigation is launched with immediate effect, and Min-ho rushes to his wife to save him. However, Soo-jin learns that Sang-woon spilled the beans about the Macau account. Over the years, her husband has received 15 billion won from that account. Soo-jin warns Min-ho to help the people in charge of the Namsan accounting books and sneak them out of the country. However, after learning that Soo-jin and her husband are on the move, Dong-ho calls for an emergency security meeting and mobilizes the force to arrest insurgents trying to escape the country. The military spares no resources and arrests the two men Min-ho was helping to flee in the meantime. Dong-ho tries to get Soo-jin to leave the country so she won't be able to save her husband, but she refuses. Dong-ho gives her the same speech President Jang Tu-jun gave him about standing in a quicksand and not asking for help. Soo-jin wakes up to find a suicide note from her husband. She asks Mang-il to call the police, but he refuses. Mang-il convinces Soo-jin that Min-ho dying is what is best for everyone, including the 50 political candidates who benefited from the subsidy Min-ho's company received from Sang-woon. Mang-il insists that this was what Min-ho wanted and had asked of him. As they talk, Soo-jin receives a call informing her of her husband's passing. In his suicide note, Min-ho asked to be remembered as the young man who fought against corruption and not the failed politician come corrupt businessman. Soo-jin mourns her husband and promises to remember him as the young Min-ho and avenge his death. During Min-ho's wake, she meets with Sang Cheon, and they make plans to go after Dong-ho. In return for his help, she promises to make Sang Cheon's dead father a martyr and help him get his supporters back, as her first act of revenge. She sends Jang Suk a picture of Jong Yun buying the lethal drug that led to President Jang Too-jun's sudden declining health. Jang Suk meets with Jong Yun and asks her about it, but she denies it. She insists that she needs to avenge her brother, and she knows Jang Suk will find out the truth soon. However, she hopes to slow him down until the other things in play come into focus. On the other hand, Jang Suk reminds her that he will stop at nothing. While in mourning, Soo-jin visits Dong Ho and warns him that his time is up. Jong Yun rushes in to turn on the TV. According to the news, Sang Cheon held a press asking for an investigation into President Jang Too-jun's death. Soo-jin cautions Dong Ho that he started the war, but she will finish it. Already, a team of prosecutors are looking into the case and interviewing witnesses. Jang Suk is tasked with leading the team, but Dong Ho calls him asking for more time. Jang Suk tries to convince Dong Ho to give up before it is too late. He is worried that Dong Ho thinks he is the only one who can fix the nation and is turning into President Jang Too-jun. After failing to convince Jang Suk, Dong Ho takes a different measure and has him arrested. The Whirlwind Episode 9 begins with Soo-jin calling Sang-woon a few minutes before the hearing and informing him everything is ready. They have the evidence and civil organizations on standby. She tells him word for word everything to say at the stand. She orders him to say that on the fateful night of November 17th, Dong Ho came to him, distraught over his upcoming arrest the next day. Sang-woon gives a passionate statement about how Dong Ho came to seek his help to see President Jang Too-jun and beg for mercy. However, according to Sang-woon, President Jang Too-jun refused to give him an audience. Forced into a corner, Dong Ho then switched his plans and confessed to Sang-woon that he would make President Jang Too-jun and make sure South Korea had a new president by the next day. Yun-suk tries to use her influence to prevent the National Assembly members from being swayed by Sang-woon's false testimony, but unfortunately, Soo-jin has already sunk her claws into them. Dong Ho holds a press conference challenging Sang-woon's testimony, but it only serves to incriminate himself further. Sang-woon brings up evidence that Dong Ho went to the Blue House on the night of November 18th. He also makes it clear that he was not at the Blue House when the president collapsed. As for his relationship with Soo-jin, he says they have always been friends, and she was the one who convinced him to come forward with the truth. The more Dong Ho denies Sang-woon's statement, the deeper the hole he digs for himself. Soo-jin watches the drama with interest and decides it is time to contact Sang Cheon and have him request Dong Ho's impeachment. Meanwhile, she also organizes protesters to call for Dong Ho's impeachment outside the Blue House. She also threatens Chairman Park and has him call Young-won to release Jang Suk. After his release, Jang Suk visits Dong Ho at the Blue House and promises him to go all the way. Even though Jang Suk is torn between his duty as a prosecutor and his friendship with Dong Ho, he understands what should happen. At the same time, Dong Ho expects Jang Suk to remain honorable, and his only request is that he must take Soo-jin down with him. During the hearing, Jang Suk admits he has doubts about what happened on the night of November 18th. He basically puts a nail in Dong Ho's coffin, just as Soo-jin had expected. She revels at Dong Ho being taken down by his only friend. As things get hotter, Dong Ho meets with Young-ik and records the meeting. In the meeting, he promises Young-ik half of his power if he gets Soo-jin to back down. As they discuss, the National Assembly passes the motion to impeach Dong Ho, and Soo-jin starts counting her eggs as the acting president. Young-ik is hesitant, but Dong Ho threatens him with the possibility of Soo-jin teaming up with Sang-woon and coming for them. Upon hearing and getting the recording of Dong Ho promising to give him half his power, Young-ik gets motivated enough to help Dong Ho and dismiss his impeachment. On the other hand, Soo-jin publicly comes for Young-ik after Sang-woon asks her to. In a press interview, she promises to deal with corrupt chaebols, sending a message of warning to Young-ik. She then sets a meeting behind Yun-suk back at the Blue House with the former First Lady and the cabinet members. However, Young-ik gets to Hyun-soo, and he convinces his mother to lie and protect Dong Ho to save himself. The former First Lady switches sides and publicly announces that Dong Ho came to see him and not President Jang Too-jun on the fateful night of November 18th. She effectively clears him of any suspicion and asks President Jang Too-jun's supporters to give Dong Ho a chance. Soo-jin is shocked given this happens at the event she planned to gain President Jang Too-jun's approval from the grave. However, all hope is not lost, as the third impeaching hearing is yet to happen. This time, The Constitutional Court of Korea justices will have to vote, but just like the public, most of them are on the fence, unsure about what to believe. Dong-ho believes there is time to persuade them, and so does Soo-jin. She already knows that 4 out of the 9 justices are on their side, but they need 2 more to win. She, Mang-il, and Pilgyu quickly find dirt on the justices and use it to threaten them to vote against Dong-ho. In the meantime, Young-ik also uses the bullets in his gun to coerce the justices to vote for Dong-ho. Even Yun-suk does her best to threaten the leader of the justices with his alleged affair with the former First Lady. The next day, Soo-jin sits ready to enjoy her tea, confident she will have her way. However, she is given another shock when the justices deny the motion to impeach Dong-ho. Dong-ho summons her to perform her duty as the prime minister and orders her around. She tells him that he is becoming the very thing he hates by getting in bed with the Daejin group. However, Dong-ho tells her that he is one step ahead and is taking things further. The scene cuts to Jong-yun giving Jang-suk the video Dong-ho took of Young-ik, talking about their manipulation of the Constitutional Court of Korea. Jang-suk is surprised by Dong-ho's determination to go under with the sinking ship. Right on cue, we see Dong-ho holding a press conference and admitting that he went to Tae Blue House on November 18th with the intention to kill President Jang Tae-jun. The Whirlwind episode 10 picks up where we left off, with Dong-ho incriminating himself on live television. In his speech, he says he is ready to cast stones and endure the stooges thrown at him as well. He plays the video of Young-ik admitting to meeting with the political affairs and incriminating Soo-jin. He then promises that before leaving his office he will take Sang-cheon, Young-ik, and Soo-jin down with him. He claims it will be his last act of service to the country. After the press conference, the country enters unprecedented times as Dong-ho becomes the first sitting president to be investigated. Dong-ho voluntarily submits himself to the prosecutor's office for questioning and is welcomed by Jang-suk. Jang-suk informs Dong-ho that his family is having a hard time and that his son wants to quit school. However, Dong-ho is determined to see this fight through, so Jang-suk promises to protect his family for him. Dong-ho insists that Soo-jin is their top priority and she must face the music too. Meanwhile, Soo-jin and Sang-cheon meet to bring in a new partner to their side. They head to Young-ik's place to convince him to join them. He agrees to use his influence to get the prosecutors on his payroll to turn against Dong-ho and file for an arrest warrant. As for Soo-jin, she mobilizes Pilgyu to lead the prosecutors. She and Sang-cheon also send out their supporters to protest outside the prosecutor's office. Jang-suk is surprised when his fellow prosecutors storm his office and inform him that they have requested an arrest warrant for Dong-ho. On the other hand, Dong-ho had already asked Yun-suk and Jong-yun to abandon him to survive. He expected Soo-jin to pull this off, but he didn't expect Yun-suk to ignore his order and help him. Yun-suk interrupts Soo-jin's press conference as she denies the accusations against her and proclaims martial law. Soo-jin was almost swaying the public with her antics as she insisted that she was innocent. Yun-suk interrupts and gives more recorded evidence of how Soo-jin threatened the justices. Soo-jin is surprised and hides her face in shame. Dong-ho calls Yun-suk and asks her to continue tarnishing Soo-jin and Sang-cheon. So Yun-suk accuses Sang-cheon's supporters of being spies, and a fight breaks out among the protesters outside the prosecutor's office. Dong-ho orders their arrest, saying they are guilty of insurrection. He puts Pilgyu in his place. Before walking out, he promises to be back as a citizen and take responsibility for his actions. After returning to the Blue House, Yun-suk pledges her allegiance to him again. He asks her to write a list of all innocent politicians that need to be safeguarded. He then sends his prosecutors to go after the justices who sided with Soo-jin, fires and arrests Pilgyu, and refuses to give Jang-suk more time to deal with the internal conflict at the prosecutor's office. The justices refuse to talk, and half of the prosecutors refuse to work. To deal with this, Dong-ho leaks information to the media that one of the justices is cooperating. Upon hearing this, Young-ik quickly plans a meeting to bribe the 3 justices on their side. Dong-ho anticipates this and calls Sang-woon to tell him where his dad holds such meetings. He promises Sang-woon he will help him get the company if he cooperates. Young-ik and Sang-jin are caught red-handed trying to bribe the justices and are immediately arrested. Dong-ho then turns his attention to Sang-cheon and uncovers how he got his family killed. He shares the information with the media, and Sang Cheon loses the support of his political party and followers. Soo-jin starts to shake in her boots as she waits for Dong-ho to come for her next. She visits him at the Blue House and recalls how happy she, Dong-ho, and President Jang Tae-jun were when they first got to the Blue House. Dong-ho asks her to go down with the 50 assembly members who received illegal campaign funds. As they talk, Soo-jin gets a call from her daughter that the police are raiding the house. She rushes home to comfort her daughter. Soo-jin spends the night thinking about Dong-ho's final request. She writes a few things on her laptop, and the episode ends with Jong-yeon rushing to Dong-ho's office. She starts to inform him about Soo-jin, and the episode ends with a cliffhanger. Geez, what did Soo-jin do now? The Whirlwind episode 11 starts with Man-gil secretly handing over Min-ho's tablet to Jang-suk. Did he jump ship? He asks Jang-suk to spare him and his family in return for the tablet that allegedly has all the information on all of Min-ho's illegal deals at Namsan. Returning to where we left off in the previous episode, we find Soo-jin at the prosecution's office, ready to face Jang-suk's interrogation. But she's not defenseless. Soo-jin has tampered with Min-ho's diary on the tablet, making President Jang Tae-jun appear innocent. She crafts a narrative where her husband was in cahoots with Sang Cheon, and President Jang Tae-jun betrayed his son. Unfortunately, Dae-in-ho holds a press conference clearing Ji-tae's name based on the so-called evidence on Min-ho's tablet. He insists that all facts on the tablet are true, not knowing that Soo-jin added her version of events to the diary. That must be what she was typing in the last episode. By the time Dong-ho realizes his mistake, he has given Soo-jin what she wants. Soo-jin paints him as a cold-hearted man who killed an innocent president, Jang Tae-jun. The next day, Dong-ho thinks back to what President Jang Tae-jun once told him about lying confidently enough until the other party starts doubting what they saw. Dong-ho meets with Jang-suk and admits that he was wrong. President Jang Tae-jun's supporters will never believe Tae, former president, was capable of any wrong. As such, they need to adapt to living in a world where President Jang Tae-jun remains a saint. Unfortunately, they don't realize someone is taking pictures of them as they talk. At the same time, Dong-ho gets a call informing him that Soo-jin has submitted a special prosecution bill and it has been passed. She recommended attorney Choi Jin-soo as a special prosecutor and is working to make Jang-suk lose his credibility as a prosecutor. She uses the photos taken of him talking to Dong-ho that morning and stirs things up further. On the other hand, Dong-ho vetoes the bill and faces questions about his relationship with Jang-suk. Soo-jin keeps her feet on Dong-ho's neck by blackmailing her former university contacts, currently holding big positions in government unions and organizations. She helps them organize protests all over the country demanding Dong-ho's resignation. The prosecutors also turn against Jang-suk, and Soo-jin has her case dismissed. Jang-suk calls Dong-ho and despondently tells him it is all over. Pressure continues to mount, especially after President Jang Tae-jun's followers assume that Dong-ho killed an innocent man. They come for him in every way. The ministers supporting President Jang Tae-jun resign, and Dong-ho is left with no support as Soo-jin drives the country to a standstill. After marching to the National Assembly, she instigates Tae protesters to turn their attention to the Blue House. Yun-suk begs Dong-ho to go into hiding at the safe house, but he refuses to let Soo-jin win. He has Jong-yeon meet up with Man-gil and trick him into believing she needs help sneaking out of the country. She gives him blank documents meant to help Soo-jin deal with 2 politicians and secure her seat as the next president. She pretends her phone is dead and needs to say goodbye to her mom. Man-gil gives her his phone, and she takes it and locks him inside the random house they were meeting at. Dong-ho uses the phone to threaten Soo-jin and asks her to meet him at the hill behind the Blue House. She temporarily halts the protest to the Blue House and asks the leader to await her signal. Through numerous flashbacks, we learn that President Jang Tae-jun, Soo-jin, and Dong-ho used to climb that hill on many occasions and watch the sunset. President Jang Tae-jun was always happy spending time with them and expected the two to protect and keep him in line. In a way, Dong-ho ended up keeping him in line while Soo-jin protected him. At the hill, Soo-jin gets sacred as Dong-ho gives her mere seconds to decide if she will go down alone or with the 50 assemblymen. He also threatens to reveal that she is the real killer of President Jang Tae-jun. She is about to decide when the police rescue Mang Il and he calls her. He apologizes and explains that Jong Yun took his new phone and it has nothing. Instead of calling the protesters off, she gives them the signal to come through. She already asked the police to stand down and warned the commissioner to stand on the right side of history. However, Dong Ho decides to stage signs of struggle and tells her that she will go down as take killer of the president. Soo-jin assumes he means President Jang Tae-jun and mocks him for having no evidence. Sadly, Dong Ho meant himself. He grabs her handkerchief in an effort to frame her further before jumping off the cliff. The Whirlwind episode 12 begins with Yun-suk running to Dong Ho's office only to find his will on his desk. She was hoping to convince him to move into the safe house with his family, so she started looking for him. From across the field, she sees him talking to Soo-jin and realizes what he plans to do. She hurries to get to him, but unfortunately, she is too late. Park Dong-ho jumps off the cliff. Sadly, he is rushed to the hospital, but he doesn't make it. On the other hand, Soo-jin is arrested as the prime suspect in Dong-ho's death and brought to the prosecution office. Yun-suk visits her and shows her a video from Dong-ho. In the video, Dong-ho reveals that the only evidence to exonerate Soo-jin is in his will. He asks her to choose between going down alone or with the 50 assemblymen. Yun-suk warns Soo-jin that she has until the next morning to decide before Dong-ho's burial. If she doesn't confess her crimes, Yun-suk will bury the evidence with Dong-ho. Soo-jin orders Mang Il to find video evidence to exonerate her. She hopes one of the many cameras at the Blue House caught the truth, but she is unlucky this time. Mang Il only finds a video proving that Yun-suk witnessed the incident. Obviously, Soo-jin knows that Yun-suk would never agree to testify on her behalf, so technically she is screwed. Right before Dong-ho's wake, Soo-jin names all the corrupt officials, but insists that she knows nothing about her husband's illegal dealings. Unfortunately, Jang-suk is forced to set her free after Yun-suk keeps her promise and clears her in Dong-ho's death. However, Soo-jin is confident that they will never catch her, and she has escaped another trap. She mocks Jang-suk, saying that she is the acting president and can't be tried in court. In the meantime, Jang-suk sends his team to arrest the corrupt politicians while setting another trap for Soo-jin. Jong Yun uses her relationship with Mang Il to get into Soo-jin's office, pretending to bring him flowers for his birthday. Even though they are over, she claims old habits die hard, and she is there to warn him to watch his back. A few hours later, Soo-jin is freed, and she heads straight to her office. She finds a troubled Mang Il. Mang Il is angry because, according to the news, Minho's diary revealed that President Jang Tae-jun was suffocated in the hospital, and Soo-jin accused him of being the culprit. He lashes out at Soo-jin, asking her to come clean and exonerate him. Soo-jin admits she killed President Jang Tae-jun, but she tries to assure him that he will be okay because she is about to be the next president. She promises she will use Dong-ho's funeral to her advantage, just like she did with President Jang Tae-jun's. All this is caught on video thanks to the secret camera Jong Yun installed in the flower vase. The video is played in real time all over the country, and by the time Soo-jin gets a call from her daughter, it is too late. Jang-suk orders the police to rush into Soo-jin's hospital and arrest her. Dong-ho's body is cremated, and Yun-suk places the signed flag from Gi-tae on Dong-ho's casket. It is revealed that Dong-ho signed the flag, accepting to be the whirlwind that Gi-tae dreamt of. Meanwhile, Soo-jin is arrested and sent to jail. Ironically, she is locked in the same cell she was in when she was arrested as a protester while in university. At the time, she inscribed, "Long live democracy," on the walls. The inscription is still there, and she breaks down in shameful tears after seeing it and remembering her younger self. How utterly heartbreaking that this is where she ended up. Her younger self must be disappointed. In the epilogue, Dong-ho says that he fought not for the country but himself. He couldn't endure any more injustice. Whatever the case, Dong-ho achieved his dream of a new world. He kept his promise and became the light in the darkness.